Today I attended the 5 p.m. Mass at Notre Church in New Hyde Park. This is my home church back on Long Island. I was happy to be home for the holiday weekend and have the opportunity to attend this Mass with my family. I have had a lot of fun being at the various Masses throughout the city, but it was really nice to be at a church that was familiar to me. I also really appreciated that I did this church last, as I was able to experience so many different Catholic Mass experiences and expand my knowledge about music within each parish, and then come back to the church that I was constantly referencing in my time in the city. Being at so many different churches in the city meant that their mere size and grandeur scale was something that I had never experienced before, especially at St. Ignatius Loyola. However, there was something really beautiful and charming about the medium size of my church. Growing up, I always felt that my church was the perfect size, as there was always room for me to scoot down for more people to sit in my pew, but the church was always filled up to a point where I felt like I was part of a bigger community. Something I always loved about my church is that there's a big Jesus depiction hanging in the front and center of the church. This is something that mesmerized me when I was younger, as the wires that held up Jesus and the cross are very hard to see. When I was little, I always believed that God was holding up this crucifix, and even being 21 years old, this piece still holds that allure for me of how it's even held up above us. I think that this permeates even my belief of God, as the whole concept of such an important figure above us all is truly alluring and fascinating to really think about. This Mass was one that I really enjoyed, as I think there were a lot of homophonic songs. There's something simplistic about these songs, as they're easy to follow for the congregation. I think there's also a sense of comfort amongst songs that are more simplistic in this way, as they're not intimidating for the congregation if they want to jump in. This was really interesting for me, as I noticed that so many of the people at my church were actually not singing. At first, I was a little dismayed, as I wanted to see the involvement and enthusiasm that I had seen at so many other churches in the city. But I was reassured by the fact that one of the chapter presentations on Swain spoke about the way that the worshipers do not necessarily need to be singing in order to be engaged. If we think of funerals as an example, there's generally a more somber tone and people are often choked up. That's a time where people cannot physically participate verbally, but this doesn't mean that they're not engaged or moved. However, I do wish there was more of an emphasis on music within my own church in terms of sometimes having a choir, as usually there's only a cantor or a children's choir. The cantor was absolutely amazing at this Mass, but I realized that a lot of the appreciation that we have for her, we as in the majority of the people in the church, is because we're watching her more than we're singing along with her. I think it's always nice to see a congregation being involved in the service, and maybe with a choir and a different tone set that seems a little more inclusive and sets the tone of a communal effort to worship would help more people feel inclined to join in through song. Of course, this is only my opinion, but I do think that through the implementation of a choir, the tone of the Mass could change, as it felt very rigid to me after seeing some of the churches in the city, such as St. Francis of Assisi. Overall, I think that there will always be a certain comfort I have with my church and its music, but I do appreciate the experiences that allowed me to see the way different Masses value music in different ways.